The story of Joan of Arc is one of the greatest mysteries of history. Joan was a peasant girl living in medieval France when she reported hearing voices that instructed her to support Crown Prince Charles and lead his army to victory against the English in the 100 Years' War. After having convinced Charles to allow her to participate in the siege of Orléans, she gained recognition in battle and rose to prominence in a series of swift victories leading to Charles' coronation. And then her abilities seemed to falter as she lost battles and was captured by enemy forces, tried for witchcraft and heresy, and burned at the stake in 1431 at the age of 19. Eventually canonized as a saint of the Catholic Church, Joan is now recognized as a national heroine of France. Of course, questions still arise as to the meaning of that phenomenon. Were Joan's reported mystical experiences valid spiritual encounters, or the result of some form of mental illness? And if she was on a mission from God, then what of her apparent failures in some of the later military campaigns? Did she misinterpret God's instructions? Or was the entire episode simply some type of psychotic imaginings of a disturbed teenager? The Edgar Cayce material may shed some light on these questions, for he gave readings for 5 individuals who were said to have lived during that experience, including several readings for a woman identified as the modern incarnation of Joan of Arc. A life reading given on September 26, 1927, for a 36-year-old saleswoman in a stock brokerage office described a past life as Joan of Arc. The reading confirmed that Joan of Arc represented in the minds of many the criterion for strength and beauty. While persecuted during that sojourn, she gained and lost. This portrayal of Joan as vacillating between extremes is consistent with historical accounts, producing a pattern which also carried over into this woman's modern life as powerful abilities that seem not just in the right direction. For example, her stockbroker employer, himself an assertive, confident man, described her interpersonal style as a mighty queen of old, and men and women all seek her favor. He also confessed that on one occasion, she sort of backed me to the wall. Her reading contained similar observations, stating that she had the ability to destroy or to make men. Interestingly, her reading also cited a past life as the mother of Achilles in ancient Greece. The reading attributed Achilles' strength directly to his mother's own power that allowed her to dominate everyone around her, male and female. And yet personal power can be a problem if misdirected. In the case of Joan of Arc, after some initial success on the battlefield, she seems to have allowed ego to distort her spiritual attunement and decision-making, leading to losses in battle and her eventual capture and execution. Whereas many accounts of the life of Joan of Arc are absent any female associates, the Cayce readings do insist that Joan had like-minded friends and supporters during her quest. For example, a reading for a 56-year-old woman described a past life as Marcel, who lived in France when Joan was visited by the voices from without that confused many of the material-minded and brought destruction to herself. Based on her awareness of church rituals and teachings, Marcel had mixed feelings about Joan. She meditated within herself to understand whether individuals were to pursue inner voices and outer visions, as Joan had done, or should individuals trust in the edict of men of this or that nature to bring material hardships into human experience. Her reflections did bring a certain freedom from earthly cares and desires, yet when required to interact with the earthly minded, she could at times become confused. From this experience, she did carry forward a tendency to throw off ritual and seek directly God's will within, much as Joan had done at times during her mystical states. A reading for a 42-year-old woman described a past life as Marcella, who lived in France during the periods when Joan of Arc aided in the social and political experience of her people. Although associated with Joan, Marcella was denied the ability to join in with Joan directly, which caused her to worry and question later in that soldier. Of course, Marcella was not the only one who had questions about Joan's mystical experiences that allowed her to rise in power, and yet Marcella was not a doubter of Joan's ability and gained through the experience spiritually, although not materially. The reading for this woman noted that she had psychic ability as a sensitive in her modern life that was carried over from that French sojourn and encouraged her to apply it in practical ways in her daily life. A reading for a 55-year-old business teacher described a past life as Jean Ficheur, who lived in France among the companions of Joan of Arc. In that life, she was helpful to Joan, and although unknown to historians, was a powerful individual in her own right, regarded as a saint by those she assisted, yet not finding favor with men. Her reading reminded her that she carried over that same ability and urge to be of service that she manifested as a companion of Joan of Arc. A reading for a 35-year-old woman described a past life in France as Angelica, during that period of turmoils when there was the great leader known as Joan of Arc. Angelica was a friend, associate, and helper of Joan, gaining spiritually in wonderment from that activity. In her modern life, the challenge was to make the unfoldment of such mystical abilities a practical thing in her daily life, bringing peace, joy, and happiness, and making life worthwhile. Her reading did contain a curious remark about how the expression of mystical powers could be awe-inspiring to the opposite sex, which she had also experienced in her modern incarnation, bringing some disturbance to her mind as well. So we have a small collection of readings indicating a soul group associated with a famous, yet deeply mysterious and dramatic historical figure. These readings do confirm the mystic ability of Joan of Arc, yet also concede that it was misdirected at times in its expression. Although some accounts of Joan's life tend to portray her as a loner, these psychic glimpses into her life paint a different picture, in which Joan did have some supportive friends and companions among female associates for at least portions of that experience. The question of the validity of Joan's professed mystical states, hearing of voices and seeing visions, is taken for granted in the Cayce readings. Edgar Cayce himself had some experiences that seemed to parallel those of Joan of Arc in certain respects. He spoke for angels, such as Michael. He saw visions of wars and battles, even in his waking state. He struggled with keeping a balance, of avoiding distortion of the information that he channeled from spiritual sources. The readings do insist that mystical abilities are innate within each soul and only need to be nurtured and developed in practical, constructive ways. That was the message emphasized for the individuals in this group who received readings from Edgar Cayce. Apparently, in Joan's case, those abilities were misdirected at times in that historical sojourn, echoing forward in time to the 20th century.